Despite the disappointments that a lot of people on the national scale would point at concerning James Franklin's tenure at Penn State, obviously there are Big Ten championships involved and trips to the Rose Bowl and BCS bowl games, New Year's Six bowl games lined up consecutively for a number of years. And then a playoff appearance that included 2 wins this last year. And, a field goal away from the national championship game. What I'm leading into is, of course, we just passed Memorial Day, and a number of the big magazines have hit the stands, Lindy's, Athlon's. I've not looked at them, but I've heard secondhand that Penn State's in the top 3 or 4, as you might expect. Do you remember as much of an anticipation for a season as this, when almost everyone's anticipated heavily there? But this one, wow, they're really in rarefied air.
Yeah, we were just talking about this recently. A couple of friends of mine and I were, and a couple of colleagues, and we all agreed you probably have to go back to 1999 when they were preseason number 1. I mean, that 2017 team, after they'd won the Big Ten in 2016, had a lot of hype around it, but you were only 2 or 3 years removed from the sanctions. People knew in the trenches that team was not where it needed to be yet, and that showed up in that Ohio State game that year. In that team, I mean, that team was very good. Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley, Chris Godwin, Mike Gesicki, that offense was explosive. It was fun. It could score on anybody. But you kind of knew that defensively there were some holes there, and you had the holes in the trenches, and you knew that, maybe you weren't truly a national title contender, and there was no one who was legitimately putting that as maybe the number 1 team in the country preseason. It hasn't been this way again since 99, when they were the preseason number 1, when you had LeVar Arrington coming off the end on one end of the defensive line and Courtney Brown on the other, and they went 1-2 in the draft that year. And, if it not for just an incredible string of unlucky plays at the very end of that Minnesota game that caused that season to come unglued, they probably won a national championship that year. Yeah, it's been since 99. I think that a team has had this much hype compared with realistic expectations going into the year. Because there's been some years since, like I said, I mentioned 2017, some of those mid to late 2000 years towards the end of the Paterno era where they'd win 10, 11 games, win a Rose Bowl, whatever it may be, where there was a lot of excitement, but you never thought they truly could win a national title. I think this year, I'm not going to say it's national championship or bust, because I think there's very few times ever a program should view a season that way. But man, you feel if you can't do it this year with everything you have coming back, paired with what Ohio State loses, paired with what your schedule is, and even just looking around college football in general, you have a hard time finding a team that you truly believe is head and shoulders better than this team, top to bottom on the roster. There's a lot of expectation and a lot of excitement around this team. And like I said, it's probably been since before the turn of the century that there was this combination of excitement with, again, like legitimate national championship hope and expectations like they have now.
There's not a quarterback in the Big Ten who has achieved as much as Drew Allar. At the same time, there is not a quarterback probably in the Big Ten that everyone's expecting to, meaning he's proven the most, but he also has the most to prove just because of the enormous expectations.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you said, he's definitely proven the most of any quarterback in the Big Ten. But I also, like you said, having a lot to prove, I think there might be still more untapped potential with him than maybe any quarterback. And, maybe put Bryce Underwood kind of on a different pedestal because everyone knows the expectations with him. But as a true freshman, you're not going to expect to see that this year. There may not be a quarterback in the Big Ten with more untapped potential yet either. So, yeah, it's a big season for Drew, obviously. And, it's kind of a cop-out to say it with any team, but they're going to go as far as he goes, right? Look at last year. Fiesta Bowl plays great against Boise State, and they roll. Against Notre Dame, the Orange Bowl, he had one of the worst games of his career, and in the end, that interception at the end was the biggest play of the game of the season. Like that interception cost them a trip to the national title. So it's, they're going to go as far as Drew will take them. Now, I will say this year, I think I got to say too, this might be record for the last 2 years of furthest we've been into a show without mentioning wide receivers. But I think this year with the improved wide receiver room, that'll help a lot too. But yeah, they're going to go as far as Drew takes them. But like you said, he's got the most experience of any quarterback in the Big Ten. It probably has the highest ceiling, the most untapped potential yet. And I mean, heck, there's few quarterbacks in the country who have the tools Drew has. If Drew comes out and puts it together and has that breakout season that people are waiting on, there's a good shot he goes 1-1 in April. and at worst, probably the number 2 quarterback after Arch. So, you don't get quarterbacks like that very often. And I think, again, that's kind of where some of the differences between this team and the 2017 team I mentioned earlier. As great of a college quarterback as Trace McSorley was, he wasn't a guy where it was a lot of like backyard football. He's just going to run around, make plays. If he needed to grip it and rip it 30, 40 yards down the field, he didn't have that, and Drew does. So I think it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be exciting to see because as far as they go is going to hinge on that right arm of Drew Allar. As good as his offensive line is, as good as this running game should be, we've seen it the last couple of years in the big games. When he's been successful, they've won. When he hasn't, they've lost. And it's probably going to be the same way this year.